Well, people, it's a sad, sad day in the life of my garage. After everything I have put this truck through, all of the incredibly heavy loads, towing things that were double, maybe even triple the truck's weight, driving it across the country several times, driving it across the country overloaded and with a crack block. The courier has passed. Whitey is dead. So story time. When I got this truck, it smoked really bad. It needed valve stem seals and probably valve guides. It had 200,000 miles on it. And so right before we moved back here, I had a friend of mine, I built a head for it. I had this thing, so I had the valves so tight that you could put brake cleaner in them and it would not leak through the seats. But I didn't have the cam towers. And so we tried to use the cam towers from my original head, put it all together, ran great for about 2 minutes, and it seized up. And it needed to be line board, or at least the cam needed to be line board. So that didn't work. Yeah, that didn't work either. So he just went ahead really quick, cleaned up my original head, put valve stem seals in it, put my original head on it. But he did notice that a couple of the bolt holes in the block had cracks coming off of it. And it ran great. It didn't smoke anymore. It was still gutless as hell because I had 300,000 miles on it. But it started pumping oil into the radiator. Never got hot or anything, but it just was pumping oil into the radiator, and you can see the hoses are all kind of soaked with it. So you'd have to top up the oil. You'd have to occasionally flush the radiator out, because the oil would accumulate in concentration until the coolant became like mousse, and then it would overheat because mousse doesn't flow and doesn't transfer heat. And so kind of would keep an eye on it, but basically it would always run about the same temperature, and then all of a sudden it would start running hot. Oh crap, okay, time to flush this all out. Run a bunch of purple power through it and a bunch of water, flush it all out, fill it with coolant, and you're okay for roughly a year. Well, I'd gone more than a year, and I was looking at it, and it looked fine. And yesterday, I looked at it, and I was like, this is looking kind of thick. I'm going to have to flush this out next time. Well, on the way home last night, it was running about 3/4 of the way up the gauge, which is higher than it normally runs. And by the time I got home, it was higher than that, but it never got all the way up to hot. But when I, got to town and was going slow enough, you could smell it. And then when I turned off onto my street, the oil light came on. It was still running and still driving, but it was really hot. And so I got it into the oil light went back off when you sped up, but I got into the yard, shut it off, started it back up. It didn't sound great cranking, but I was hoping it was just hot and I'd be able to flush this out and be going down the road again. But this morning I went to start it, and it sounds like only one cylinder's got compression. So at the very least, it blew the head gasket. At the most, it melted a couple pistons, which I think it frankly got hot enough to do that. So, yep. I've been needing to swap this engine out for a while, at least since 2021. So I got 4 more years out of it, about 10,000 miles. So it's going to have to get swapped now. But seriously, it's sad, because for all the things that this truck and I have been through that should have blown this thing up, that's all it took, was last night. But it's been dying for years. But anyway, I got to get to work, so that's that. Hello, people. So those of you that have watched my channel for a long time are going to recognize Whitey. There's my 1981 Ford Courier with a 1980-81 Mazda B 1800 B2000 grill conversion. I did a full restoration, or almost a full restoration on it before we left Washington State. I have owned this truck for 18 years. And when I got it, it was just an absolute piece of crap. So rusted out, you could put your foot on the front tires. And so, longtime watchers of my channel will remember some video I did of this, because I started documenting the restoration on this. And then I bought a really crappy Chinese camera and started video documenting it. And that's what really got me working on the channel. And so I'll go over it real quick. So 81 Ford Courier, 320,000 miles on it. I got it from a guy who was going to turn it into a pickup bed trailer because it was so rusted out. And he says he thought the transmission was bad or the clutch was bad. It was the clutch. It was so rusted out. The fenders were gone, cab corners were gone, rockers were gone, doors were gone. You could open the door up and then pull it up like a Lambo door because the A-pillar was gone. You could sit on the seat, put your foot on the front tires. Just totally rusted out. I had a brand new clutch disc, or a reman clutch disc, in my garage from another earlier Courier I had. And it basically cost me 40 bucks. I bought the guy a power steering pump, put it on his 1-ton farm truck. He used the power steering pump as a hydraulic pump for the bale spike. And he gave me the truck. So I got it home. At the time, I had a really nice B3000. I don't have any pictures of it. I threw the clutch in there. I threw a Weber on it because the original carburetor was leaking. And the next day I drove it to work. It rained the night before, and I got soaking wet because of all the water coming up. And I started doing little things to it. Like, I did the Mazda conversion. That was one of the very first things I did. I threw some extra junkyard doors on it that were in better shape. They actually had door handles in them. Then some time went by, I lowered it. Just cut the springs and put blocks in the back. I worked for a guy part-time driving a tow truck, and he had two Mazda B2000s, like silver there. One of them was about as rusty as this. It was an 84, and then an 82 Sport model that had been wrecked when it was a couple years old, and they just pounded it out, filled it full of Bondo, and sent it down the road. So I put that cab on this because it wasn't rusty, and I ran it like that for a long time. I put slotted mags on it. I put the flatbed on it. And I started doing the body work. I started accumulating parts to do a restoration and customization on it. Well, then we left Oklahoma, we moved to Washington, and I drug all that crap with me. And I continued to use the truck. I'll even say abuse it, because, you know, the payload on this truck is technically 1,800 pounds. At least it's 1,800 pounds in pretty much every country but America. Here it's 1,400. No difference, though. Just the DOT would only rate it to that weight. And I constantly had 2,500 pounds. I had 3,000 pounds on the back, just hauling junk to the scrap place, hauling parts and whatever, towing cars behind it. I think the most I ever had behind it was a 59 Dodge Coronet 4-door, weighed about 4,000 pounds, and a trailer that weighed about 4,000 pounds on the bumper, pulling it on the tail end of a tornado, actually. So I was dodging trees going down the road. So anyway, the time came. I accumulated more parts. I found another cab for it that seemed to be pretty much rust-free. It was not. COVID hit, and I had a 2-week furlough. I was going to do everything on it 2 weeks. Didn't happen. But over the summer, until about September, I did the cab swap, did all this work. I had another engine that I kind of went through just a little bit. It was kind of, I had a turbo 2.3 out of a turbo coupe that was going to go into this, but for the time being, I wanted to put an engine in it that didn't smoke like this one smoked really bad. And that engine turned out to be junk. So we put the original engine back in it, pulled the head off of it, rebuilt it, put it back on, and then for some odd reason after that, it started pushing oil into the radiator. No big deal. It still drove fine. It didn't heat up. It was okay. Every so often, though, I'd have to flush out the cooling system, like every 1,000 miles or so, I'd have to flush out the radiator. So the time came to move back here. We were 15 miles north of where we used to be. And I loaded it up, overloaded it up, hit the road, kept an eye on the temperature gauge, kept an eye on the oil, kept an eye on the radiator, and it did fine. And I've been driving it for the last, 3-4 years like this. And I got to thinking, hey, it's been a while. I need to flush the cooling system. And I checked it at work, topped it off, and I was thinking, it's looking a little thick. So before I drive it, I'm going to go home. Before I drive it, I'm going to take care of it. Well, on the way home, it melted down. So the temperature gauge never got all the way to hot, but apparently because the oil, it turned to mousse basically, and since that doesn't flow and that doesn't cool, what I was actually reading on the temperature gauge was the temperature of the metal. So it was probably about 350 degrees. It sounded kind of weird to me, like maybe the oil was super thin, but it wasn't knocking and it wasn't pinging. I could smell the oil burning. I didn't smell any coolant. It was still running fine. And so I pulled up here in the yard and it stalled. Started it back up. It cranked over normally. It started right back up. And I kind of revved it a little bit and it sounded just a little, it didn't sound terrible, but it didn't sound normal. So I shut it off, went in, went to bed, whatever. Next morning I said, I'm going to check that out, make sure it's doing okay. Went to crank it over and had about 1 cylinder compression. Take a listen to this. Sounds like maybe 1 cylinder's got compression. Just flood it and see if it will. Yep. Blowed up. Oh well. So much for that. See, it never got up to the hotline, but it got close enough. And I think that if there was no coolant or nothing flowing, the heat, there would be nothing for the sending unit to actually measure. So the heat of the metal around it is what it was measuring. So that means it was probably pushing 350 degrees. And it probably melted the piston. It could have blown a head gasket, but there wasn't any steam pressure. So, I don't know. Either way, it's dead. So yeah, after 18 years and 120,000 miles of basically limping this truck along. I mean, it has smoked since day one, terrible. After we rebuilt the head, it quit smoking, but that's when it started pushing the oil into the coolant. But after all those years and all that stuff and every damn thing I've ever asked this truck to do, it is done without any problems. It's never left me stranded, I think. It's been an excellent truck. They say, oh, it's just a piece of machinery. It's an inanimate object. It doesn't have a soul. Bullshit. If any vehicle had a soul, it was this truck. And now it's dead. Finally. So, I'm either going to put the 2.3, not the turbo one, because I'm saving that for the Cricket wagon. I'm either going to put the A23 in it, or I'm just going to have to part out the B2000 like I was originally. Put it right in there and get this truck right back on the road. But there's other projects, but this is going to have to get done because I've got a 1-ton, I've got a trailer, which right now is occupied and I can't use it. I mean, hell, I could put tags on Grandpa's truck and use it if I had to, but realistically, this truck is far too useful with the flatbed to just let it sit. Plus, after all that work, it's just going to hell sitting here in the yard. You can see how faded the hood has gotten. Plus, the vinyl stickers are coming off. That yellow paint didn't hold up with a damn. You can see it peeling off. Pretty disappointed in Wex paint, or Wen paint, whatever the hell it is. Anyway. So yeah, that's it. Unfortunately, he's done to death. And I'll have to fix it here pretty soon. But these are all going to take away from the Rambler and take away from the Tracker and take away from eventually that Cricket body swap onto the Celica. I'm going to need to get started on Luke's car next year. And then the wagon. I got too many things going on. But bear with me. We're going to kind of jump around here and get things done. I will see how nice those seats actually came out from the car wash. But anyway, unless you guys want to see me working on the house, I got to get some things done on that. But I'll have some shorts out, little things that I've done or video that I haven't released to the public yet. Looks like it's about time to redo those. But we still got tomorrow, so I'll get a couple more things done then. But until then,